pastimes of the Supreme Lord Ramachandra is a continuation of the lineage of kings descending from the Surya dynasty. There's a whole detail of many family lineages or ancestry of Ramachandra coming from the Raghu dynasty. Shukadeva Goswami says, Maharaj Katvanga, the son of Maharaj Katvanga, was Dirghabahu, and his son was the celebrated Maharaj Raghu. From Maharaj Raghu came Aja, and from Aja was born the great personality Maharaj Dasara. Being prayed for by the demigod, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Absolute Truth Himself, directly appeared with his expansion and expansions of the expansion. Their holy names were Rama, Lakshmana, Bharata, and Shatrughna. These celebrated incarnations thus appeared in 4 forms as the son of Maharaj Dasarath. O King Parikshit, the transcendental activities of Lord Ramachandra have been described by great saintly persons who have seen the truth. Because you have heard again and again about Lord Ramachandra, the husband of Mother Sita, I shall describe these activities only in brief. Please listen. Prabhupada writes in the purport, unless one is a Tattvadarshi, in complete knowledge of the Absolute Truth, one cannot describe the activities of the personality of Godhead. Therefore, although there are many so-called Ramayanas or histories of Lord Ramachandra's activities, some of them are not actually authoritative. Sometimes Lord Ramachandra's activities are described in terms of one's own imaginations, speculations, or material sentiments. But the characteristics of Lord Ramachandra should not be handled as something imaginary. While describing the history of Lord Ramachandra, Shukadeva Goswami told Maharaj Parikshit, quote, you have already heard about the activities of Lord Ramachandra, unquote. Apparently, therefore, 5,000 years ago, there were many Ramayanas, or histories of Lord Ramachandra and his activities. And there are many still. But we must select only those books, written by a Tattvadarshi, Jnaninas Tattvadarshina, not the books of so-called scholars who claim knowledge only on the basis of a doctorate. He's not naming names, but there are names that could be named, who, with PhDs after their name, expounded in lengthy treatises about Krishna and Ram with the principal objective of saying something other than what the scripture says. This means that. And Prabhupada took exception, and he's not naming names. But those of you from India, you know what he's talking about. Doctor, you fill in the blank. This is a warning by Shukadeva Goswami, period. Rishabhis Tattvadarshabhihi, although the Ramayana composed by Valmiki is a huge literature, The same activities are summarized here by Shukadeva Goswami in a few verses. Because Prabhupada begins his explanation in Srimad Bhagavatam on this point, being a follower of Srila Prabhupada, I'd like to also begin descriptions of hearing about Lord Ramachandra in a similar note. And I thought especially to speak about that here in Naperville because one of the many nice things about our community here in Naperville is there's lots of very enthusiastic persons coming forward to take part in Krishna conscious activities here. And the source that one hears from is a very important word of caution. Not this part of the world versus that part of the world. It's true everywhere. Prabhupada's purports and Shukadeva Goswamis are speaking. They're presented for the world, for everyone. But when one is beginning the path of bhakti, Prabhupada gives this example when you're growing a garden. I know some families that have spent time growing a garden. And one of the things that happens when you're beginning to grow a garden is your garden becomes the food for the raccoons and all of the, nice little creatures that have 4 legs and they're hungry. So you grow a garden for them. So what do you do when that starts to happen? You build a fence. And they figure out how to jump over the fence or eat through the fence or, get to your garden. So you build a taller one or stronger one. So similarly, when beginning the life of devotion, you make a little nice fence around that garden, the creeper of bhakti, and not allowing other things in to take away the fruit of the cultivation of your garden of bhakti. And one of the things that helps cultivate, in fact, the main thing that is the basis of devotion to Krishna, is hearing and chanting, shravanam, kirtanam. In fact, regardless of one's culture or language, the teaching of Bhagavad Gita is Krishna is in the heart of everyone. Sarvasya Chaham Riddhi Sannivishtam. Krishna says, I'm situated in the heart of everyone. Which means attraction for Krishna is already there because Krishna is there and we're part and parcel of Krishna. It's just natural. And how does that attraction for Krishna become kindled or awakened? By sound. The sound vibration that you hear, the quality of that sound vibration that you hear is all important. Not understanding that principle, there's a tendency from the scholar's side to do what scholars do. Interpretation, the ascending process. This means that. That's what scholarship is. And you're not a scholar unless you come up with a new one. Isn't it? I mean, to do your PhD thesis in whatever it is, it has to be in something new that hasn't already been done, whether it's science or religion or philosophy. If you're going to get a PhD, you have to come up with a new one. Something that somebody else hasn't already done. So if it's philosophy and religion, you have to come up with a new one. So it's interpretation. This means that. Then you have to say, this is not as good as that. Somebody else said this, but that's better. Then you get your PhD. Spiritual knowledge works the other way, descending. And this means this. And one just receives it in a descending fashion. And that's what's being advocated by Shukadeva Goswami and by Prabhupada in his purport, and I'm wishing to pass that on to you. Rather than go here and there and hearing this and hearing that, because it's about, for example, it's about Ramayana. Someone innocently may think, what's the harm? It's about Rama. And you hear from here, hear from there about Rama. It's about Rama. What's the problem? And this very introductory part is being presented. Prabhupada is expressing it this way. Shukadeva Goswami understood, and that was just after the end of Dwapara Yuga. Kali Yuga hadn't gotten fully ramped up yet. There were many renderings of Ramayana, some of which were legitimate or standard or descending knowledge, and some of them were the other kind. And essentially, I'm just going to leave the other kind over there, and we'll speak of the legitimate ones only. And when there is something that's of this descending nature, just as he's saying, you've heard this many times, but the nature of something that's transcendental is that it's ever fresh, just like the Mahamantra. How many times can you say the Mahamantra? And it remains ever fresh. Unlimited number of times. Kirtaniya Sadhari. Same mantra. Hare Krishna, 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 Hare Hare. It's not like, okay, what's the next one? It's the next one's the same one. Because it's ever fresh. Krishna is Naviyovana. And something like, similarly, when you read Bhagavad Gita, how many have had this experience? And I'm sure the answer is everyone has had this experience. You read some part of Bhagavad Gita, and then some time passes in your devotional service, and you go back and read the same section of Bhagavad Gita, and you find things in that section that you previously read that you didn't even see before. Yes? And then you go back and read it again, and you find things that you didn't even see before the first two times. And then you go back again, and why is that? It's not that it wasn't there. It's the same words. But part of it is our receptivity or our Krishna consciousness is growing, and therefore we can discern things that we couldn't discern previously. But it's also Krishna's ever fresh. Krishna's ever fresh. So there's newer and newer realizations all the time on the same subject matter. So we don't mind hearing the Ramayana or Krishna katha again and again. It's not like, oh, I've already heard that one. Tell another one. Give another version. There are some people that's their taste, that's something they want. I attended a home program in a Bengali family in New Jersey once. And it was an older family. It was, this is like a commentary on the side, but it was very clear. They wanted, as is a religious duty or bringing auspiciousness into their family, they wanted to invite a sannyasi to their home. And that was what was the purpose. It wasn't so much to hear about Krishna. It was, punya. Bring the sannyasi to our home. So they invited Bengali friends. All this whole big basement filled with older people, older generation people. And they had been accustomed to the doctor fill in the blanks kind of presentation of this means that. So the family said, speak on Bhagavad Gita because these are, newer people. So I spoke on Bhagavad Gita. And the first hand that went up and said, could you give some different interpretations on that verse? This means that, kind. And I said, we don't do that. Sorry to disappoint you. This means this, and that means that. This is Bhagavad Gita as it is. And we like the descending knowledge, not the speculative knowledge kind. And I tried to say it nicely, but I wanted to give him a very clear answer, respectfully. We want to hear this descending knowledge. So we're selective about from whom we hear and what are the sources that are the points of reference. Rupa Goswami teaches in this way: Shruti Smriti Puranadi Pancharatriki Vidinina Aikuntiki Harer Bhaktir Utpatayaiva Kalpate. Utpat means big disturbance. Utpat. In spiritual matters, things that are spoken must be spoken with reference to the scripture. Not you say this means that. You speak with reference to scripture. The scripture says that's what is to be done. And the various sources, Shrutis, Smritis, Puranas, the Pancharatras, the Vitis connected with each of those, rules and regulations, and that's the responsibility of one who is speaking or discussing topics in unspiritual matters. And to fail to do so, it's a utpat, it's a big disturbance. So, right from the get-go, because Ramayana is very important literature for establishing morality and ethics and proper conduct. The ideal standard for an ideal leader, and that sets the standard for an ideal citizen or follower of an ideal leader. This is the standard, and we can't go in there with our speculation machine and scramble it around. That's a no-no. And so we don't do that, and we should be careful to not hear from those who do that. Having said that, there is variety. Prabhupada has taught us this principle. Variety is the mother of enjoyment. Have you heard that one before? Variety is the mother of enjoyment. So, using that adage, Prabhupada explains, when Krishna performs his pastimes, then in each of the appearances of Krishna or Ram, there's the same basic thread of his pastimes. But within the thread of his pastimes, there's some variety. Because variety is the mother of enjoyment. The essence is there on the basis of rasa. Rasa meaning the persons with whom Krishna interacts, or Ramchandra interacts, there's an experience of happiness, spiritual happiness, or rasa, an ecstasy by the soul who has love for Krishna or Ram, interacting with Ram or Krishna. Because the thing that's the same is the rasa. And the thing that's a little variegated is the detail. So it adds some spice to the khichdi, or to the sabji, or to the Krishna's pastimes. The variety is there. In Brihad Bhagavatamrita, beautiful literature that gives examples of this. Narada is describing pastimes of Krishna. And here's a few of them that he described. This is like the variegatedness of Krishna's pastimes. In the Kaliya Damana Lila, one of the descriptions is not only Krishna dances on the hoods of the Kaliya Nag, but he invites the gopis, and together they have rasa dance on the hoods of Kaliya Nag. Or the Keshi demon, the one that's found in the pages of Srimad Bhagavatam. Krishna kills the Keshi demon. In Brihad Bhagavatamrita, described there's another version of that, variety of that in Krishna's pastimes. And Krishna tames Keshi demon. He keeps him in a corral, and from time to time the cowherd boys go horseback riding on the back of Keshi. It's like fun. There's so many nice examples. There are different appearances of Srimati Radharani. One of them that seems very much like the appearance of Sita, where the father of Radharani is plowing the field for a yajna, and within the field is a golden child. It's just like the appearance of Sita. But it's found in Kurma Purana or something like that. It's because Radha and Krishna's pastime are described in other Puranas. So it's not that this one's right and that one's wrong. There's variegatedness in the different appearances. I'll give another example. In the second canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, in the 9th chapter, there's a description of Lord Brahma, the creator of our universe, having a transcendental revelation or realization of the spiritual world after his long penance and austerity. He sees the spiritual world. It's like in this ocean of darkness before the creation begins, the beginning of Brahma's life. There's darkness in all directions. He does his tapa, and the Lord of Vaikuntha appears before him. Not only him, but the spiritual world. And he approaches the personality of Godhead, who is surrounded by all of the personalities of the spiritual world, and it identifies them, some by name and some by number. It's 16 of those and 5 of those, and like that. These are his Shaktis or his expansions. And as Brahma approaches Lord Vishnu, he stands and extends his hand in a handshake. How nice of you to come. Please welcome, have a seat. It's the rasa of that particular Brahma is the rasa of friendship. Sakya rasa. And then we'll go over here to Sri Brahma Samhita, and it describes that particular Brahma realized his relationship in Madhurya rasa. It's a different Brahma in a different universe. It's not this one's right and that one's wrong, or that one's right and this one's wrong. They're different Brahmas in different universes. So there can be different pastimes of Lord Ram. But we don't want to hear the speculative ones. We want to hear the descending transcendental ones. And it's very important to know where you're hearing from. I hope I made my point there. Be discriminating. It's something like, supposing you had a whole line of wires lined up on the floor. One of them is plugged into the wall and the other ones aren't. But they all look the same. So each one of them, plug in your device, or just like grab a hold of the other end of it, and nothing, and nothing, and nothing. Electricity, because it's plugged in. There's an unbroken line that goes to the plug in the wall, and we pay the electric bill, so the power's on. So you get electricity. So something that looks like a live wire that isn't plugged in, there's a break, it's not connected to the power plant, it doesn't deliver electricity, although it may look the same. What we want, similarly, is narrations that within Shabda Brahman, it's not just information, it's the spiritual world. The personality of Godhead, his abode, his associates, his pastimes, everything is there in that sound vibration that's the descending kind. And when that sound vibration, that's the descending kind, touches your heart, it's enlivening to the heart. Just reading a section in the Bhagavatam right now, where it's the Jai Vijay section, Canto 3, Chapter 15, where the Kumaras come to the gates of Vaikuntha. Jai and Vijay say, "Stop, you're not qualified to enter." The four Kumaras say, "What's wrong with you? You're seeing duality in a place where there's no duality," and etc., etc., and they curse them. And the Kumaras accept, we've offended you. And we accept the curse, but please, accompanying the curse, permit that we not forget the Supreme Personality of Godhead as we descend from Vaikuntha into the dark region of material existence. As that's happening, the Lord of Vaikuntha, who happens to be omniscient and happens to have, later he says, the whole thing has been ordained by me, it's orchestrated, it's just my internal potency to carry out a Leela. But in his Leela, he comes to know of this little skirmish at the gate. So he quickly comes. He comes so quickly, he doesn't even put his shoes on. He comes in his bare feet. And he doesn't ride Garuda. He moves so quickly. And when he comes, the goddess of fortune comes with him. And then he just glances at everyone. Like, we might look around the room and see other people. Not the same. When Lord Narayan glances, that glance touches the hearts of everybody there. The anger of the Kumaras is gone at once. The concern, anxiety, apprehension of Jai and Vijay is gone at once. Their hearts have been touched. It's specific. Prabhupada comments, uses that exact language about 4 times. Their hearts have been touched. And they're ready for whatever the Lord wants. That's Vaikuntha. It's no anxiety. Just this past week, I was at MIT and University of Connecticut in stores, and for some reason the students picked stress management. I don't know why students would pick stress management. It's not what they want to hear about. But that's the topic they wanted to hear about. So I started off the same way in both places. I said the best stress management is to not have any. And that's called Vaikuntha. Now, in one case, there were a few Indian students and they were nodding their heads. Yes, you know what the word means. But that's best, it's Vaikuntha, or no anxiety, place of no anxiety. But we're in the realm of Kuntha, like Mega Kuntha, Mahakuntha. Lots of anxiety. But it's anxiety because of forgetfulness of Krishna. And when there's remembrance of Krishna, just like Lord Narayan comes, it just glances. That's the perfection of life. Whatever the Kumaras were before, they're now devotees. We were discussing this morning. Maybe someone could say, one perspective is, they were Brahman realized, but they weren't yet Bhagavan realized. Well, that was taken care of by the Lord's glance. They were Bhagavan realized. They were in Vaikuntha consciousness, or Krishna consciousness. So, as the glance of the Lord is all powerful, the subject matter heard about the Lord, this is Shukadeva Goswami's presentation here. When it's heard in this descending manner, the whole of the spiritual world is there. Your entrance into Vaikuntha is made possible through that sound vibration. Actually, all of that is within the name itself, just the Hare Krishna mantra. But then the details are expanded in the form of narrations of, in addition to the name, the form and the qualities and the pastimes, Namarupa Guna Lila, of the personality of Godhead. So we're interested in the descending ones. And variety is okay, provided it's the descending ones. Just like there are versions of the Ramayana where it's the glance, when Ram wants the ocean personified, sometimes it's Samudra, sometimes it's Varuna. He wants his assistants to cross the... He doesn't need his assistants, he's the personality of Godhead. But he wants his assistants because he's playing the part of an ordinary human. He's not, he's the personality of Godhead. And there's no response from Samudra. So Ram sits and performs some austerities for some days, and Samudra doesn't come. So Ram becomes angry. The transcendental kind, not our kind. And so one version says he fires an arrow. Another version says he glances at the ocean. And his glance is so powerful, the ocean starts to boil. That's a pretty powerful glance, right? Ladies that do some cooking, just glance at your pot on the stove and it starts to boil. And that's just like a pot on the stove. Or, like a swimming pool. Just glance at your swimming pool, now it's warm, you can go swimming. Or a lake. Or an ocean. And just glance at the ocean. It was boiling so vigorously that the aquatics within the ocean were being tormented. And so Samudra, the protector of the residents of the ocean, came forward with folded palms. So the Angani Yasya Sakalendriya Vritti Manti, the senses of the personality of Godhead are so powerful. They're at the same time omnipotent or all-potent, but they're also, one sense is interchangeable with another sense. And the potencies are inconceivable. So I wanted to just describe one such reference. It's from the Padma Purana. And it's a description from the Padma Purana from the question and answer. The question was, why was Sita banished? And then the answer is given as follows. Sita, when she was very young, along with her sister Urmila and two cousins, they were outside playing, outside the Janaka's palace. And while they were playing, they were in a garden. And there were two parrots in the royal garden that were narrating the pastimes of Rama. Sita and Urmila and their two cousins were fascinated with hearing the description of this wonderful personality of Ram. And lo and behold, in the course of their narration, it describes the wedding of Sita and Ram. And Sita's listening to her wedding before she's just a little girl. She's really interested in hearing the story. And, the whole, large part of Ramayana is told. And then the parrot stopped. And Sita says, keep going. And they said, well, that's all we know. And then she presses them and said, well, how come that's all you know? Where did you get what you got? And they said, well, we normally were in a very distant forest where there's a sage by the name Valmiki. And he regularly recites this, and we were hearing, we're just repeating what we heard. We can't tell you more because that's all we heard. But Sita doesn't stop there. She wants to hear more. She thinks maybe they're holding back or something. So she puts the two birds in a cage. And they start crying. And, we're used to being free and flying wherever we wish to go, and you confined us. Please don't do this. We won't be able to survive. So Sita makes a halfway arrangement. She lets the male bird go and keeps the female bird in the cage. And the male bird is crying and crying, and the female bird is crying and crying, and Sita says, well, tell me, what you're not telling me. Tell me the rest. And the female bird in the cage is pregnant. And she says, I'm pregnant, and you're keeping me away from my husband. You will also have to experience the same. And right there in the cage, she dies. And the male bird, seated on a distant branch, sees the female companion die, and he faints and falls into a lake and drowns. So the narration continues in Padma Purana that, and the only reason I'm telling you this is because it's Padma Purana, it's a Sattvika Purana. That very same soul of the male bird that fell into the lake and drowned when he fainted became the washerman, who later, although he's just a common person, because he spoke about Ram being henpecked because his wife Sita has spent long duration of time in another man's place, and he's now accepting her back as his wife. Ram, being the ideal king, hearing these words from a common person to set the standard of the ideal king, he placed the duty of the king above his own happiness of being with his wife, and for that reason he banished Sita, who at that time was pregnant and had to go to the hermitage of Valmiki, where she then gave birth to Lava and Kusha. And then in Valmiki Ramayana, Shatrughna is there to observe the birth of Lava and Kusha. So many, just like Dasarath understanding, we know from Valmiki Ramayana, how Dasarath, in his final hours, reveals to Kaushalya what he had forgotten of why he was in this predicament, because he had done a similar thing. One day, when he was very young, as a young prince, he had been given some special mantra, a power that even without seeing the object of prey, by this mantra he could fire his weapon and destroy the object of prey. So, you know the narration, but we'll say it again because it's Shabda Brahman, it's transcendentally instructive. He went at night and he heard what sounded to him like an elephant or tiger taking water from a lake, a river. And he fired his arrow, and he heard on the other end a man's cry. And why have you done this to me? So fear entered his heart. He went and he found the dying son of an elderly Rama and Brahmani who was fetching water for his blind mother and father. And the young man, Dasarath pleaded forgiveness. What am I to do? This is the circumstance. And the young man said, I'm in too much pain. Pull the arrow from my body. But if I pull the arrow from your body, all the blood will come gushing out and you'll die at once. Better that I'm going to die anyway, better I die at once. But just one request, please let my blind mother and father know that they are now sonless, without their son. And they're at such and such location, follow the trail, you will find them. So he came, you know the narration. He came before the elderly blind parents. And they said, my dear son, why is it taking you so long? You're normally not gone. It's just a short distance to get to the river. And questions and questions, and Dasarath is trembling, seeing this blind, frail, elderly couple. How will they live without their son to care for them? And in a soft voice, he explains everything that happened, very truthfully. And they're stricken with grief. They ask Dasarath to take him to the place by the river, and so they can feel, because they can't see, the body of their son. They request him to perform the funeral for their son, create a fire, and burn the body, and we'll enter into the fire also, because we have no means to care for ourselves. Because you've been truthful, we'll forgive you for this unintentional but cruel act. But know it, that you will also have to undergo the same suffering as we are having to undergo, the loss of your son. By that utterance of the Brahman and Brahmani, the offense to a young Brahmin and the elder Brahmin couple, this plight coming to Dasarath came, and it wasn't like some intentionally cruel act. It was an unintentional wrong. And how many times in our lives have we done unintentional harm to other people? Like lots of times, most likely. Unintentional. Maybe you don't even, keep an inventory of what they are, because there's so many. You don't even know about it because nobody said anything. But it happens. Now what? So something may come our way. And when that something comes your way, what do? Our Bhagavatam gives the instruction what to do. You accept Tattenu Kampam Susavikshamano. It's the instruction of Lord Rama, or a verse spoken by Lord Rama in the 14th chapter of the 10th canto. You accept. If there's something that's due to my past back there, deeds, and now today it's coming as some misfortune, accept it as that which is due to whatever it is that was back there, whatever wrong deed was done, or deeds, and accept it. Meaning, don't invest your valuable human form of life, energy, and intelligence to try to neutralize the reaction. You may have to deal with something, but don't become invested in changing the reaction. Accept the reaction. But one thing is make sure that your consciousness does not budge 1 inch, the verse says, from the lotus feet of the Lord. For by so doing, one will inherit the kingdom of God. It says one will inherit the property of the Father. And Brahma, in his case, his Father is the personality of Godhead. So one goes back to Godhead by that unflinching remembrance of the personality of Godhead, which is practically the same thing that that Jai Vijay said to the four Kumaras. We accept the reaction that you've given to us, the curse. We understand that very soon we're going to descend from Vaikuntha, the gates of Vaikuntha, in the direct service of the Lord into the dark region of material existence. But one request, please grant us that this one thing will always be engaged in remembrance of the personality of Godhead, whatever the circumstances. So that's our goal. Always remember Krishna, smartavya satatam vishnur, vishmartavya najata chit. Always remember Krishna, never forget Krishna. That's the one principle that governs all the vidhis of Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti. All the rules, everything, all the good things in life are for that one purpose. Remember Krishna and try to serve him in a humble mood of service. And one thing. If we can achieve that one thing, the configuration of duality can be whatever it is. So it's okay, provided we can do this one thing. And we may have our favorite configuration of duality. But it may not always be our favorite. It may be something that we don't like so much. That's okay, provided this one thing can be there. And let that be our goal. And as we prepare for this Friday, where Lord Ram makes his appearance, as you read pastimes of Ram or hear recorded narrations of the pastimes of Ram, let that be the objective. Certainly wonderful instructions about how to lead your life, principles to govern your life by, but it's far more than moralities and those kinds of things. Those are important, but the essence of even the moralities is one thing. Always remember the personality of Godhead, and our position is being his humble, menial servant. Let that realization over the next 5 days grow, and then Ram Navmi Day, let it come to its fullness. It happens every year, so we get an opportunity. If we didn't do so well last year, we can do better this year. Like, each mantra you chant. Okay, I didn't chant the last mantra so well. Let me chant this one nicely. And then you get to chant the next mantra and the next mantra. So who knows how many lifetimes we've been observing Ram Navmi. Let us try to pull together and achieve this one thing better than previous times, each time. Always remember the personality of Godhead and our humble mood of service to him and his devotees. Hare Krishna. So we have a little bit of time, 7 minutes. Any comments or discussion?
Thank you, Maharaj. On the abduction of Sita, that she passed the test that Ram gave, going through the fire. Why did he still vanish?
Did you hear the question? Ram tested Sita as she entered into fire and came out unscathed. He demonstrated to the world she was pure and untainted. Having done that, why did he banish her? That's the question. Well, there's an external and there's an internal reason. The external reason, Prabhupada writes, describes in the purport. It's that, is not here, it's from the Padma Purana description, that because he's the ideal king, he was demonstrating that an ideal king places the well-being of the praja, those under his care, he places that above his own interests. His own interest was to be with his beloved. This is more important to an ideal king than my own interest. He was demonstrating that. Now I've been through this, well, that's okay, but what about Sita? Poor Sita, she's for no good reason, why did he do that? Like, Rama was wrong, kind of thing. It's a lila to demonstrate a principle. And as far as Sita is concerned, then there's the internal reason, or the rasika reason. And the rasika reason was to experience intensification of love through separation. Vipralamba bhav, love in separation, intensifies the love of meeting. So, for himself, Ram, and for Sita, to intensify their love for one another. This is if we look upon the thing in a worldly sense only, it doesn't make sense, one could say. If you look at it from a transcendental lens, it makes complete sense. He's teaching a principle of leadership, and at the same time he's experiencing intensification of rasa through separation. And many other things too, because Lakshman has to transport her and not tell her. That's difficult. It's a very difficult thing to do. Anyway, there's many other rasas involved with this primary rasa, but the primary rasa of the lover and beloved is intensifying that love through separation. So it's a lila to arrange for that, because otherwise, how would it happen? How can Sita be separated from Ram? Unless Ram orders it.
Thank you.
Something else? Okay, then we'll have kirtan. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Sita Ram Lakshman Bhagavan ki Jai.